Okay, welcome to the presentation. This is the E3 presentation for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, a new role-playing game in development at BioWare and to be published by LucasArts. So we're going to be giving you a very special early look at the game and start off because it's pretty early in development. We're going to show you some of the concepts that will be driving the look of the game and talk about some of the game features. And then we're going to be showing you an actual character from Knights of the Old Republic, so we can talk about some of the technology at that point. And finally, we're going to show you two actual in-game areas, one of them from a very familiar setting to Star Wars fans, and another one from an all-new world.
So as Derek flips through the concepts here, I'm going to be describing the main features of our game. So what you're looking at right here is a Sith trooper, one of the many enemies that you'll be battling while playing our game. Our game is going to be real-time combat, though we will have pause and play, so you'll be able to pause the game at any time and assign orders to your characters. This game mechanic will be very familiar to those of you who have played the Baldur's Gate series. However, we do plan to have a faster-paced, more action-oriented combat, so there'll be less pausing to break up the combat. What you're looking at here is an example of a character you might create during the character creation process. So during character creation, you're going to be able to choose between 3 different racial types. You'll be able to choose between 6 different classes, whether you want to be male or female. You'll be able to choose your name, whatever name you want. You'll be able to choose all of your skills and your feats. Essentially, you're going to be able to customize your character as much as you'd be able to customize a character in any of the other BioWare role-playing games. So the 6 classes we plan to have are going to include classes such as the Scout, the Scoundrel, the Soldier, all the way to this guy right here, the Jedi Guardian. These classes are based off of the heroic archetypes that you've seen in the movies. Examples of this would be Han Solo the Scoundrel, Luke Skywalker the Jedi, or Boba Fett the Bounty Hunter. So our game is going to be a party-based game. You'll be able to control up to 3 characters at any given time. You'll be drawing from a pool of characters that have been pre-generated. Each of these characters will have their own personality and will include such things as the battle droid you see right here, or a Wookiee, or another Jedi, or an exotic Twi'lek. Each of these characters is going to have a fully realized personality. They'll be able to interact with your main character. You'll be able to form friendships with them, rivalries, or even romances.
So part of every Star Wars experience is the fast-paced action scenes like the space combat or the racing scenes that often form the climax to the movies. Well, we wanted to make sure that we had that exciting component in Knights of the Old Republic. So we're actually building a component onto the engine that has the ability to do multiple types of gameplay, so that when you come across a racing scene or a space combat scene, instead of giving it to you in the form of a cutscene, you'll be able to actually hop in and shoot down that enemy fighter from your turret, or participate in races that are on a number of different worlds. You'll be able to actually do these things yourself. And another cool thing about Star Wars, I think, is a lot of people want to have their own Millennium Falcon and blast around the galaxy. Well, in Knights of the Old Republic, you'll actually be able to do that. This is a hyperspace freighter that you'll have, and it performs a number of duties. It's a home base for the player. It's a place for you to store all your characters when you're not using them. You can always return to it. It's sort of a safe place that you can get healed and so on. But it's also a focus for some of the more action-oriented scenes in the game.
So being a role-playing game, we're also going to have hundreds and hundreds of items available to the player. These items are going to include the most famous items from the Star Wars movies, such as the blaster, the thermal detonator, the lightsaber, or the double-bladed lightsaber. We're also going to have more than 100 different enemies for you to fight. These enemies are going to range from huge monsters such as the Dread Rancor or the Krayt Dragon, all the way to battle droids and Sith Jedi like this guy right here. Now this handsome fellow you're looking at right here is an example of the Scoundrel class, and he likes to use his skills to solve most problems, though as you can see he'll also rely on his blasters. There are going to be more than 100 skills and feats in the game, and these are going to allow you to do such things as set up demolitions or take them apart, use stealth to break into bases, break into security systems. You'll be able to reprogram droids. You'll be able to use your persuasion on people to change their minds about things. You'll also be able to break into computer systems. This girl right here can also join your party. She's a Jedi Knight and has access to the 50+ powers available in our game. These powers are going to emulate any of the powers you've seen in the movies. As well, there'll be a few unique powers that are unique to our era and game.
So one of the very few things we've been able to say about Knights of the Old Republic prior to E3 is that it takes place roughly 4,000 years before the time of the movies. Now, this may seem like a really long time, but actually in the Star Wars universe, even space travel has been around for tens of thousands of years. So this is actually a very ancient and spacefaring civilization. And you'll notice this reflected in our designs. They're very similar to the movies, so that you really feel like you're playing something that's very Star Wars. It's a very Star Wars experience. But at the same time, it's all new content. So we're able to put in subtle cues that remind you that this is from an older and more civilized age. So we're just going to pop out of that and go into a model viewer where we can look at an actual character from Knights of the Old Republic. The engine we're developing for Knights of the Old Republic is an all-new engine that builds upon what we've learned in developing engines for role-playing games and action games as well. Games like Neverwinter Nights, MBK2, and Baldur's Gate. So this is an actual character. You'll notice that she has completely modeled fingers and facial features. She's got eyes that move and blink and lips and teeth. She's basically a very fully modeled character. So this is very important in being able to create a very cinematic look to our characters and all the in-game actions that you'll see your character performing. And part of being able to do this is having a really good animation system. So you'll notice that as we go from one animation to the next, there's no popping or jerking of the character. The animations actually flow very smoothly from one to the next, which is really important in creating a realistic motion for a character, especially in things like combat. Now, another thing you'll notice is that this character actually has a number of little parts that actually move and flow as she performs her actions. And these are things like the flaps on her costume and the little bits on her hair. They're moving procedurally, which means that the character can perform any action and they'll move and flow. This allows us to do things like types of materials like cloth and fabric or hair or even fur like on a Wookiee, so that these things can actually move the way they should, and we can even make these things blow in the wind. Basically, all this detail allows us to create characters that we can use in the actual game that will flow straight from a cutscene into gameplay and back, but it's your character, it's not a pre-rendered animation, so you'll see your actual character acting with this kind of emotion. So part of every cinematic experience, of course, is sound, and for that reason we want to make sure that all the dialogue in Knights of the Old Republic is fully voice acted. So this is an example right here.
I knew you could do it. The Force is truly strong with you.
So that's an example of a line that was voice acted. Now, part of being able to pull off good voice acting is lip syncing, which normally takes a lot of time to hand animate. So with Knights of the Old Republic, we're going to use procedural lip syncing so that we can give a character a WAV file and they'll be able to speak it. And by doing this, it means that we can get all of the dialogue for the game fully voice acted and lip synced.
I will never fall to the dark side. I will never fall to the dark side.
So that's an example of a character you'll be able to expect in Knights of the Old Republic. We're going to show you an actual in-game area so you can see what the game itself looks like.
So this first world we're going to be taking a look at is the most famous world in the Star Wars galaxy. You'll probably immediately recognize it. It's the world of Tatooine. This is a small settlement built upon Tatooine, some 4,000 years in the past. Tatooine is going to be one of the 8 worlds that you'll be able to visit while playing our game. You'll be able to visit other worlds such as water worlds, jungle planets, or cityscapes. We really want the player to feel that he has an enormously varied galaxy to explore, much like the galaxy that he saw in the movies.
This is a restricted area. No civilians allowed inside.
Another thing we feel is quite important to a role-playing experience is that the player feels that he has a lot of freedom while exploring the game environments. Therefore, we're going to allow the player to explore the worlds in the order that he wants to, choose which subplots he wants to play, and essentially create his own legend. He won't be cattle corralled along a specific path. There will be a main story, but this story is not going to limit the player's actions or make choices for him. So if you look around, you can see that there's quite a few NPCs on the streets. We actually have more than 30 NPCs right now in this small town area. We're going to be able to support many, many creatures in a given area at a given time. So we'll really be able to simulate large cityscapes or huge battles with dozens of opponents all on the screen at the same time.
Move along. Until the cargo ship has finished loading, this docking facility is off limits.
Each of the NPCs in the game is going to be as realistic as possible. They'll react as the game world changes, and they'll also recognize the player's actions. Another thing we feel is quite important are the subplots that you go through in the game. The subplots in Knights of the Old Republic are going to be the most deep and fully realized subplots that we've done so far. They won't be your average fetch and retrieve quest. They're also going to have multiple routes through them, so you'll be able to choose whether you want to use stealth or role-playing, or the most popular, Force, to get through any of the quests in the game. You've probably noticed driving around the streets, there have been several land speeders, as well as these land speeders right here. Another one of the mini games we're going to have in the game is going to allow you to drive speeders in races against other pilots. There'll be several speeder tracks built on some of the worlds, and you'll be able to go to these speeder tracks, sign up for the races, and if you do really well, you can become famous, and NPCs will treat you accordingly.
Sir, what are you still doing out here? Your mission was clear. The Jedi Council expects you to be on board that ship. You have to hurry, sir. It's about to launch.
Guess we didn't quite make it to that shuttle. You'll also notice the interface on the bottom of the screen. That's only a temporary interface that we're using right now. When we do finally finish our control schemes, we'll have 2 separate control schemes, one for the PC SKU of the game and one for the console SKU of the game. We want to really appeal to the users of either of those consoles.
So that was an example of an area that's more story-based and there's a lot of character interaction and dialogue. This is an example of an area that has a lot more combat and battle going on. This is an all-new world. It's called Terrace, and it's a giant city world that's currently under siege by Sith troopers.
Sir, planetary defenses are down. Sith landers are everywhere. The city is under attack.
So as you can see there, we want to make sure that we have all the visual effects and visual graphics that you'd expect from the Star Wars universe. So up ahead there you can see a whole bunch of Jedi. Part of the really cool thing about this era is that there's a lot of Jedi and a lot of Sith running around, so you'll definitely see a lot of lightsaber combat. And up ahead you'll notice that the lightsabers are actually blurring the very same way they do in the movies.
Get to the evacuation shuttle, young Padawan. You must not be captured. The fate of the Republic depends on it.
So as you saw there were a bunch of backflips and special moves. In the combat, we're going to have a lot of special moves, force powers and feats, and a number of different tactics and so on that you can choose to make the combat quite varied and interesting. So we're supposed to get to that shuttle out there, but we're just going to take a minute to look around the environment here and talk about the engine a little bit. The engine we're developing for Knights of the Old Republic, basically very early on we made some decisions that would allow us to create the kind of environments that we needed to create for the Star Wars universe. Typically with a graphic engine, the limitations really dictate the way you're able to build the art, and we wanted to sort of turn that around so that we would basically be able to create whatever we needed to in terms of environments. So you'll notice that actually out on that platform over there, there are people walking around. Those people are actually the same size as the main character. So it gives you an idea how huge that building is over there. And as you look across the city, it gives you an idea how really huge this entire area is. And basically what that means is we're able to create environments that are as big or as small and detailed as we need to, so that we can create the very exotic and different environments that you see in the Star Wars universe. But the Jedi said we better get to that ship there, so we better get moving. So with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, we want to create the impression that you, the player, are experiencing something similar to as though there's a great Star Wars film out there that no one's ever seen before, but you get to unfold the story as its hero. So that's the E3 presentation. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Via email.